think the whole Manafort trial is very sad. When you look at what's going on there, I think it's a very sad day for our country. He worked for me for a very short period of time, but you know what? He happens to be a very good person. And I think it's very sad what they've done to Paul Manafort.
President Trump today weighing in on the Paul Manafort trial, calling his former campaign chairman good and the trial against him sad. Manafort has pleaded not guilty to 18 charges of tax and bank fraud. The jury spent a second day deliberating today before leaving for the weekend. They will be back at it Monday morning at 9:30 a.m. Tonight, Manafort's attorney said he is feeling good about how things are going.
Does the long deliberation work in your favor?
I think it does.
Downing, what was your reaction to the president today?
We're very happy to hear from the president and that he's supporting Mr. Manafort.
Here with me to discuss it all, Josh Gerstein, a senior White House reporter for Politico, who has been at the Alexandria courthouse covering this trial, and attorney Jill Wine-Banks, former assistant Watergate special counsel. Both are MSNBC analysts. Josh, let me start with you. So you got Manafort's lawyer there saying, hey, good news. Is the prosecution saying the same thing? How is each side reading the jury not having a verdict yet?
Yeah, well, the prosecution really puts on poker faces here, so it's hard to know. And remember, this judge has also faulted the prosecution on several occasions for making facial expressions and so forth that he doesn't like. So they're even more staid than usual. We heard a prosecutor earlier today say he was happy at the moment, but that was mainly because he was able to get some sleep because they weren't up till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning every night trying to prepare for the next day's testimony. I think the questions that came in on Thursday had to be a little bit unsettling for the prosecution if they thought that maybe they would get a verdict here within a matter of a few hours, that this case was really a slam dunk. Some of those questions that came in suggested that jurors really want to pour through this evidence in detail and that we could be here a while. So I think the defense may be overstating their enthusiasm about where things stand a little bit at the moment. But I do think the prosecution has at least some reasons to be somewhat concerned.
And we showed the president weighing in on all of this earlier. We showed Manafort's attorney saying he was happy the president did that. Also, our own Peter Alexander there asked the president today about the possibility, if there's a conviction here, of a pardon for Manafort. Here's what he said.
Will you pardon Paul Manafort?
I don't talk about that. I don't talk about that.
Well, Jill Wine-Banks, what about the possibility? The president didn't want to talk about it there, but those comments certainly have people talking about it.
Well, the president has, I think, abused his pardon power, which is, I admit, completely unlimited. But it's perhaps time for a constitutional look at that, because without any restrictions on him, he has pardoned people who have been held in contempt of court. He has pardoned people who have violated very serious laws. And I don't know that he would pardon anyone here because it doesn't do him, that is Donald Trump, any good. And Donald Trump seems to protect mostly himself. If Manafort were pardoned, he would have to testify. He could not avoid that. He would lose his Fifth Amendment privilege, and that would be a detriment to Donald Trump. Now, it's true Donald Trump pardoned Joe Arpaio for contempt of court in not following court orders, and so he could do the same in this case if Manafort refuses to testify and is held in contempt. But at some point, I think the Republicans will grow a spine and that the Trump voters will say enough is enough, and we can't let him keep going this way, and we need to get the truth out. So I do agree with everything Josh said earlier about the concerns about the trial. I would be shocked if there was a verdict before 3 or 4 days. There are 18 counts that they have to consider, and juries take their responsibility very, very seriously in a complex case like this. So it's not surprising that there's no verdict.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.